Hi, all. It is your favorite patriot cult leader continuing to report on the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. So the thesis for today is twofold. Sorry, I'm holding a book. We're going to have story time. For those of you who are here, it's my Instagram account. You can leave the stories if you're bored. So the first point is about how Trump has been enacting political violence, not only how I talked about before for poor people, but also the tenet of democracy, which is a peaceful handover of political power. Trump himself did not do when he lost the election for his second term and refused to hand over power to Biden. And then there was a mob on Capitol Hill. So that's point number one. And the second point is an overarching theme of when I'm talking about these rich old white guys, who I'm talking about. And so I'm talking about the people who have political power, and I'm also talking about the tech industry and the billionaires of the tech industry. They're not old, like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, so they're not old, but they are white dude billionaires. And so the second point is how they also have power, and they are spineless and ethicless and don't think it's their responsibility to really do anything other than what they're required to from policy, and policy does nothing. So anyway, this brings it all together because remember, Trump was tweeting on Twitter and then his account got suspended, but it was like it didn't get suspended that quickly before the actual political violence was enacted, and really just nobody taking responsibility for it. And now it's like, oh my gosh, political violence. So for everyone who's calling this the darkest time in American history because of political violence, because Trump was almost killed, I say we could reckon back to another dark time in history 4 years ago when Trump lost the election and literally pretended that he won it and refused to hand over power to the president. I think that was a pretty dark time. So I'll be reading from Burn Book by Kara Swisher, a fellow badass lesbian who knows about tech and politics. And I'm on page 220. Have to do this in 60-second increments. Thank you, Instagram. Thank you, Mark Zuckerberg. Okay. Also, I have to hold the button the whole time, so I can't even put it on a stand. All right, next story. Okay, so Kara Swisher writes, on January 6, 2021, the scenario that I had concocted, which Twitter executives in 2019 told me was preposterous and irresponsible to write, became a reality. As I watched the images of chaos unfold on Capitol Hill from my DC home less than a mile away, I returned to Twitter to make a plea. Quote, let me say in no uncertain terms, I wrote, directly tagging Dorsey, chief counsel and head of product. If you do not suspend Donald Trump's Twitter account for the next day at least, this mob attack on Congress is also on you. Sorry, but he has incited violence for days, using your tools in large part, and you need to act now. This is about public safety and safety of those trapped in Congress now. He has no part in calming down the mob he has incited. This will be up to the police and National Guard. Twitter management dithered for a day before dealing with the situation. Twitter management dithered for a day, plunging into crisis over suddenly becoming a handmaiden to sedition. Trump took advantage of that dithering and continued to tweet like the madman he is. In the one final tweet that sunk him, he wrote, quote, the 75 million great American patriots who voted for me, all caps, America first, make America great again, will have a giant voice long into the future. They will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form. And then a second tweet affirmed that he did not plan to attend the inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden, which many saw as a signal to his followers that he did not intend to go along with the, quote, peaceful transition of power, a key concept to democracy. We then later have Dorsey tweets, after suspending the account Dorsey tweets, after close review of recent tweets from @RealDonaldTrump account and the context around them, specifically how they are being received and interpreted on and off Twitter, we have permanently suspended. Okay, so after suspending the account, Dorsey writes, after close review of recent tweets from the @RealDonaldTrump account and the context around them, specifically how they are being received and interpreted on and off Twitter, we have permanently suspended the account due to the risk of further incitement of violence. Oh wow, I wonder what type of violence that is. Is it political violence? Blah, blah, blah. Dorsey also tweets, We have faced extraordinary and untenable circumstance, forcing us to focus all of our actions on public safety. Offline harm as a result of online speech is demonstrably real, and what drives our policy and enforcement above all. Wow, protecting public safety, enforcement, this all sounds like shit surrounding political violence. And then obviously Mark Zuckerberg follows behind. They suspend the Facebook and the Instagram account. He's always late to the game. But he too writes, the risk of allowing the president to continue to use our service during this period are simply too great. Okay, so Zuckerberg explained that quote from Zuckerberg. The risks of allowing the president to continue to use our service during this period are simply too great. Therefore, we are extending the block we have placed on his Facebook and Instagram accounts indefinitely and for at least the next 2 weeks until the peaceful transition of power is complete. They needed to suspend his account specifically until the transition of power was complete because he was using political violence to disrupt a key tenet of democracy, which is the peaceful transition of power. Separately, he was doing it on these tech platforms, and the tech billionaires have done nothing and are super fucking lame, which is the second point. But the point is that the dude was not handing over power. That was a very dark period of time of political violence that Trump was doing. So if he died, dude's disrupting democracy. Okay, and just to jump ahead to page 233 to address the Nancy Pelosi political violence thing and also tie Hillary Clinton into it, we have, at the end of October 2022, a conspiracist broke into the San Francisco home of former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and violently attacked her husband, Paul Pelosi, with a hammer. This shocking and politically motivated act was met with alarm and horror by decent people and prompted Hillary Clinton to tweet, quote, the Republican Party and its mouthpieces now regularly spread hate and deranged conspiracy theories. It is shocking, but not surprising, that violence is the result. As citizens, we must hold them accountable for their words and the actions that follow. So that was in 2022, Hillary Clinton calling out the Republican Party and specifically also Trump for political violence. And here we are, several years later, surprise and outrage at political violence. Okay, so this is what I was reading from Burn Book by Kara Swisher. Kara Swisher is also silent on Instagram and Twitter. She's not made any comments about political violence. Hillary Clinton continues to be silent. She's not made any comments about political violence. I really like Kara Swisher a lot, and she does a podcast called Pivot with Scott Galloway, who's a professor at NYU, and he actually, despite being a rich, straight white dude, has a lot of interesting things to say, and their podcast is cool. I recommend it. It's called Pivot. I will say, though, that Scott Galloway did make a comment yesterday on his story about how there's no place for political violence in the country. And so once again, I just really do think it comes down to a privilege issue. And you do not see the female-bodied individuals who are equally subject matter experts on this topic making comments about whether or not there's a place for political violence, because we know in our bodies that this has been happening the entire time.